Hey, what's up, Amplified Unit? This is the 54th ever BC's Pro Wrestling Amplified podcast coming at you early this week. We have a lot to do as always, but this weekend especially. So Friday, I didn't want to rush too much. So I had a little bit of a window today, and even though we have NXT and AEW coming up later tonight, I felt like this was the best time to drop the podcast this week. I will still try to do a little impromptu video Friday if I am able to, but this was a good time to get something a little more lengthier. This podcast is easily going to go over a half an hour at least, so I just didn't know if I was going to have that time on Friday. So, surprise! It's podcast time. If you guys got the chance and the opportunity, hopefully you guys spend the next roughly 45 minutes with the Amplified Man, give or take a few minutes. And if you don't have the time now, hopefully you come back a little bit later and check out the podcast. Or not. Either way, it'll be there for you. A couple of main stories I want to go over and talking points that are going to be discussed a little bit later in this podcast. Two big stories for me anyway that I kind of want to spend some time on in great length. And that is Sheamus. Sheamus is speaking out recently and talking about his frustrations within WWE, and this is really good to hear. You guys know I love when people do that in that company because we already know the facts. People like BC Amplify, we know what's going on in that locker room. And what happens is a lot is you hear the sugar-coated versions from the people at the top. The Becky Lynches, the Rollinses, the Romans, the people that are doing quite good and that Vince McMahon has gave great stock into and put great stock into, the Charlotte Flairs and such. So you see them going on these huge media tours, and they're put in that position because those are Vince's, those are his A-team, basically. That is his A-team. And they're not going to speak anything poorly or bad about their boss. So whenever anybody else does in that company, they blame them or they blame the fans. It's not Vince McMahon's fault. It's not the booking. It's not creative. It's the fans because they're too negative. Or the wrestlers that are complaining in that locker room. They're just upset because they're not working hard enough and they're not in the top spot. But again, if you're a diehard fan and you really know what's going on, right? You've done your research like BC Amplified. You know that company, that locker room is in turmoil. You know how bad the creative is. You know how bad booking is. And you know how bad of a job Vince McMahon is doing these days. And by these days, I mean the last several years. And when you see somebody with some status like Sheamus finally stepping up and saying, you know what? No, it is that bad. And I've been frustrated to the point where I've had enough and I thought about never coming back because that's what Sheamus said. We're going to talk about it. And in a way, it is vindication for BC Amplified because so many people like to say I'm too negative and I'm one of the problems in pro wrestling today because I critique it too much. But am I? Am I being too negative or is that company just so damn bad? Well, now we have people like Sheamus saying, in a roundabout way, BC Amplified was right all along. And that's people in that company. You're damn right we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about Rhea Ripley and the words that she had for fans, calling them flippy-floppy fans. And the fans was actually in quotes, saying they're not really fans at all. Well, we know as pro wrestling fans that there are a lot of flippy-floppy fans, right? I've said that numerous times on this channel. However, what I'm going to explain in this video when talking about Rhea Ripley and Bianca Belair, I'm going to explain why in this situation, under these circumstances, when it comes to Bianca Belair and what happened at TakeOver, this has nothing to do with flippy-floppy fans. This has everything to do with what's right and what's wrong. And I'll explain exactly what I mean by that coming up in this podcast. But before we go over those two big topics, just a couple other orders of business that I want to kind of get out of the way up front. Number one being a lot of people informed me that they weren't able to catch Monday Night Raw's review because of buffering issues. I had several people actually tell me this. Upon my research and doing my little tests, I wasn't able to find anything wrong on my end. I did some tests myself. Everything was playing just fine. I then went into some of the metrics for the video. Still, that video pulled in thousands of viewers, and it was pretty much business as usual. Again, there was several fans that said that they didn't or weren't able to watch because of the buffering issues, but the majority watched with no issues. So it's not from the amplified man's end. You guys might want to check your connection, especially if you were on a cell phone, whoever your provider is maybe, and absolutely keep kind of refreshing it, or just click out of it, click back. Try a bunch of things. Just start pressing buttons. I assure you, nothing's going to explode. Start pressing stuff, and hopefully it'll pop up. If not, worst case scenario, just try to find a desktop or laptop, something like that, and you should be able to watch it on the desktop version. We've had this issue before about a month ago, and a lot of people were telling me that desktop was fine for them. So hopefully that's it. I don't know, to be honest. I've had buffering issues recently via YouTube as well, but a lot of you guys were telling me that it was just for my video and everything else was working fine. So I don't know. I can just tell you guys that I tried a lot of tests myself. I did some research, and everything looks fine on my end. One of you guys actually, you left kind of a funny response just saying maybe YouTube is trying to censor your videos, BC. You know what? At this point, I wouldn't doubt it. They've tried everything else. So why not just stop people from actually watching the video? I wouldn't doubt it at this point. Hopefully that's not the case. But it sucks to hear that a lot of you guys weren't able to watch that video. Hopefully by now you were able to, because that was a pretty badass Raw review. We talked about something really cool, Orton and Hardy, and then we went on a 10-minute plus rant about that main event and how I was not happy. So that was a badass review. I know a lot of you guys enjoyed. Hopefully everyone that wasn't able to watch it by now has been able to view it. Hopefully there's no more buffering issues, but you never know with this platform. But on my end, guys, upon my research and my testing, everything came out okay. So again, I don't know what provider you guys have. Maybe there's a weak connection, but because there were so many of you, I'm guessing it's the same provider. But hopefully that's worked out. The kinks are worked out, and hopefully these videos and podcasts are reaching you guys just fine today. So that's the first order of business. Number 2, we want to send a shout out to Alicia Fox and say congratulations. She marks today her 6-month anniversary of her sobriety, right? Do you call that an anniversary? 6 months of sobriety. Let's just call it that, man. I think that's really cool that she wanted the help, she got the help, and she took it. She accepted it, and she stuck with it. 6 months of sobriety. It may not seem like a big deal to a lot of you guys, but for anybody battling addiction, a day is hard enough. 6 months can seem like a lifetime to an addict. That's really cool. Congratulations to Alicia Fox. Also, I just want to talk Matt Hardy. I know I just brought him up about a minute ago, but I did want to say one viewer actually sent this out, and it's really interesting. With Matt Hardy, nothing is done without purpose. He left a message over on his social media, and it said this, and I quote, this is Matt Hardy. Against every warning, with serious head/neck injuries, I showed up on Raw to face and fight RKO. I was brutally beaten and suffered multiple injuries, but I'm alive. I'm not sure what's next. If this was my WWE goodbye, I didn't get what I deserved, but maybe I got what I needed. And I want to take you guys to the top of that statement where he says against every warning. The A in against is capitalized, the E in every is capitalized, and the W in warning is capitalized. Against every warning. AEW is all capitalized. I'm just saying, yes, usually we could say maybe that's a coincidence, but for somebody like Matt Hardy or somebody like Bray Wyatt, those people usually do nothing without a purpose. Usually with them, not too much is coincidence. He capitalized AEW and against every warning. You gotta believe that's a little bit of what may be to come in Matt Hardy's future. A little bit of a teaser, possibly, just saying. All right, before we get into the topics I truly want to get into a little bit more in detail and in depth, I first want to go over this week's AEW ratings, guys, for the week of February 19th, 2020. If you guys were wondering who's at the top of the mountain in AEW, the top of the heap, look no further. I have the results for you. Number 1, Jon Moxley. His 2020 singles record is 5-0. Overall, he is 10-1-1. Cody Rhodes comes in at number 2. His 2020 singles record is currently 2-0, but overall, he is 9-3-1. Pac is in at number 3. His 2020 singles record is 1-1, overall 6-5-1. Kenny Omega is in at number 4. This is kind of comical because his 2020 singles record is 0-0, but overall he is 14-6. MJF comes in at number 5, so MJF is able to squeak into the top 5. His 2020 singles record is 2-0, overall he is 6-1. The champion, mind you, a notable, is Chris Jericho. His 2020 singles record is also 0-0, but overall, Chris Jericho is 10-1-1. Now, for the females, number 1 is Rhea. Again, Rhea is the number 1 rated right now for this week's AEW rating system. Her 2020 singles record is 3-1. Overall, she is 11-3. Chris Statlander comes in at number 2, 1-1 for 2020, but overall 5-3. Shida comes in at 2-1 for her 2020 singles record, but overall 7-4. Yuka Sakazaki comes in at number 4. And her record for 2020 is 1-0, overall 1-2. So that shows you right there, guys, how slim the women's division is in AEW. When Sakazaki, who is 1-2 lifetime in AEW, is at number 4 in their ratings. It's not good. Number 5 is Britt Baker. 2020, 1-2 for her singles record. Overall, Britt Baker is 8-6, yet she is in at number 5. The notable here is the champion, AEW Women's Champion, Nyla Rose. Her 2020 singles record is 3-1, but overall, Nyla is 7-4. I don't know, guys. That's a very weak division, and it's never more evident than when you see their weekly ratings, and it really puts everything into perspective. Now let's get on to the 2 main stories I want to discuss, and I want to start off. And before I get to Rhea Ripley and the comments she made about flip-flopping fans, which we know there is plenty of in the wrestling world, but in this case, in this scenario, when it comes to Rhea Ripley and Bianca Belair, this has nothing to do with flip-flopping fans. This is just about right and wrong. And I'll explain what I mean by that in just a little bit. But our first big story I want to go over has to do with Sheamus. He cut a very, very good interview on something called WWE's The Bump this past week. Now, I didn't see it, but I was able to read the transcript, and I was kind of blown away. Not shocked by the dialogue, but just the fact that it reconfirms everything that somebody like the Amplified Man has been saying since day one. How bad the booking is in WWE, where they will put everything into one person and they will sacrifice everybody else to try to make it work. Even when time after time it's not working, they will keep sacrificing everybody they have. 50-50 book them into obscurity. Or even worse, put them into irrelevancy with worse than 50-50 booking. Make them a joke, turn them into a clown. And when you see somebody like Sheamus step up, stand up, and admit that that is what's going on in that company, when they speak out and they can confirm the words of the Amplified Man to every fan out there that says somebody like BC is the problem with pro wrestling today because we have a platform and we're too negative. We critique the product too much. We give overly negative criticism too much. But there is so much bad going on in WWE. The booking is absolutely treacherous. What they're doing to their own superstars is tragic. And when I speak on it, I'm the bad guy. I'm the asshole. But then you see somebody like Sheamus, who has been in that business and in that company for years, and he stands up and he speaks out about how bad it was getting for him. This is what Sheamus had to say, and I quote, "I've been in the WWE for a very long time. I have had a successful career. What can be a blessing can also be a curse. The last couple of years with Cesaro was a lot of fun. I had so much fun with the Bar. We had 5 WWE Tag Team Championship wins. But it came to a point where everything we did, the legacy we created, we kind of ran out of rope. We were getting pancakes shoved in our face, getting hit in the head with turkeys. At WrestleMania, we lost to a 12-year-old. The writing was on the wall. I then got a bad concussion from WrestleMania and I had to go back to the drawing board and wasn't sure what the crack was. I had to look at myself in the mirror and wonder when am I going to continue and if I'll even be able to continue. I was determined to come back and be in the best shape of my life. I became one of the fastest WWE champions. I followed it up with another WWE championship just to prove I wasn't a flash in the pan. A lot of crazy things happened to me so fast. There's been a lot of ups and a lot of downs in this business for me. The first time I ever felt like I was stuck in a rut was when I was in the League of Nations. We had this group that was created together, and to me, this group was set up just to make Roman Reigns a babyface. But it was a dead end for all of us. From the moment we got together, which was a last-minute thing, it was frustrating to me. I hit a roadblock. Then me and Cesaro were put together, and we had a great legacy, but again, we came to a situation where we just lost to a 12-year-old at WrestleMania. Some people laughed about it, but when you say to yourself, what am I doing? Do I need to keep doing this? We fought an uphill battle that next year. We lost to a 4-way at WrestleMania, and the writing was again on the wall. You have to start asking yourself, is this damaging the legacy of our team? I went away. I didn't think I was going to come back. I put myself into my YouTube channel and my training. I kept myself going because you can't sit on the couch feeling sorry about yourself. All the cardio, all the training, all the dieting, everything I've done up until this point is all for that moment when I take that title. End quote on those 4 paragraphs. You guys see where I'm saying for years since I've had this channel about the bad booking in WWE. And I say it time and time again, and I talk about the turkeys being slammed on people's head, or pancakes being shoved down somebody's throat, or losing to a 12-year-old Nicholas at WrestleMania, and there's some fans out there that get some good comedy out of it, and they clap their hands and they go, "This is awesome!" And then there's fans like me that understand, like Sheamus is finally admitting that it's doing damage to them, long term. One little comedic act is doing damage in the long run for these characters, for these individuals, for these human beings. But then you hear Sheamus talk about how Vince McMahon was willing to sacrifice people like Rusev and Cesaro and Sheamus. All for what? As Sheamus himself admits, all just to try to make Roman Reigns a big-time babyface. And Vince has used anybody in that company, everybody in that company, to try to get Roman to be that babyface, and it has not worked month after month, year after year. We were still in the same position today in 2020 than we were back in 2015. He still has over half the audience Roman Reigns has over half the audience refusing to believe that he is the guy, he is the babyface. But how many times, how many WrestleManias, how many years, and how many superstars have been thrown into Roman Reigns' face, forced to take the L, look up at the lights, bow down to Roman Reigns? Countless, too many to name. So when somebody like Sheamus speaks up and says, yeah, we were forced together just to do one thing, make that one guy the superhuman power being babyface, and all of us in the process, we were just expendable garbage, basically. We were all thrown to the wayside after it didn't work. And it doesn't end. Here we are in 2020. Bray Wyatt's gonna be next at WrestleMania, more than likely. It's the most likely scenario now, looking at it. And Vince will never stop. Roman Reigns is just a small part of the problem with Vince McMahon using anybody in that company as a bridge to get Roman over. This is Vince McMahon's issue more than anything else. The fact that he thinks that this pancake throwing, turkey bashing, 12-year-old championship winning type of booking, type of comedic BS is actually going to catapult WWE to the next level. And there's people like me that have been coming out week after week, month after month, and by now, year after year, and calling out the bullshit and saying how much it's hurting not just the product, but more specifically the individual, the character, the human beings that are on our TVs, putting on the entertainment. It's hurting everything. Them, the fans, the company, the business. And people like BC Amplified, oh, we're the bad guy, we're the negative ones. Yet now you see people like Sheamus saying the booking was trash. We were being placed into obscurity and irrelevancy to the point where I had to go away and think about what the hell I'm doing with my life. Sound familiar? Sasha Banks did that. Neville had to walk away. I can go on and on with people that needed a break because what the hell are they doing? Luke Harper. A couple of times. Rusev 3 times in the last 2 years. Because they even see, what are we doing? We're busting our asses. We're doing everything correct. We want to make it to the next level, and we're just being booked like absolute jokes. If we get a big time match, it's just to push somebody like a Roman. A facade that'll never get over. Yeah, it's vindication for somebody like BC Amplified when somebody finally steps up in that company and says, I was right all along. In a roundabout way. People like BC Amplified, we were right all along. And finally, when you can get somebody who's actually got stature in that company that'll stand up and say the things that I've been saying for years and getting shit on because I've said it, because I wasn't talking about how positive the WWE is and how great it is. When somebody in that company can expose them, I don't need anybody to say, oh, BC, you were right all along. I apologize, man. I didn't believe you. I don't need you to say that. What I do need you to do is from here on out, just open your eyes. Open your ears when people like me are talking, because we're not just spewing our opinions. We're not just spewing negativity. We're spewing facts because we're seeing this for far too long. I give Sheamus the utmost credit, and I thank him for standing up and speaking out about the booking and how bad it got for him, and I know so many others. I thank him for doing that because that's not the easy thing to do. In that company, the easy thing to do is to bash the fans. The ones that don't like what they're seeing, right? If you don't like, don't watch. Or we're demanding too much. Or we're being too critical. They don't want to look at the boss himself and say, hey, your booking is terrible. The creative in this company is horrible. Maybe it's not the fans. Yeah, there's flip-floppers, but maybe the majority is speaking out because they actually do want better and they're getting absolute trash. Maybe. And that leads me into what I want to talk about next, Rhea Ripley. And her comments about flip-flopping fans. And if I may just set up this next talking point for you guys. You see, after NXT TakeOver went off the air Sunday night and Rhea Ripley had already defeated Bianca Belair, Rhea then sent out a message that stated, and I quote, "To the most flippy-floppy fans in existence." Fans in quotes, by the way, meaning they're not really fans. "To the most flippy-floppy fans in existence, I guess your worst nightmare has just occurred." Why did this rub people the wrong way? Well, I'm going to explain exactly why a lot of people were upset. Not just at what Rhea sent out and calling people flippy-floppy fans. They're upset as to why we even got to this point. What am I talking about? I'm glad you asked. Let me explain. First and foremost, let me just say Rhea Ripley is a little bit correct. There is a ton of flippy-floppy fans out there in the pro wrestling world, not just WWE. The pro wrestling community has a lot of flippy-floppy fans, there's no question. However, in this case, and for this circumstance, it doesn't apply. This is just about right and wrong. This is about Bianca Belair even being in that match just as a bridge to get you to Charlotte Flair. People are upset. People got on Rhea Ripley's ass after TakeOver because of how Bianca Belair was booked. Not how Rhea Ripley was necessarily. Rhea Ripley absolutely should not have been dropping that title at TakeOver. So I agree with the decision to have Rhea Ripley win, or at the very least, walk away with the championship. Nobody that knows what they're talking about, even Bianca Belair fans, is disputing that. What fans are pissed off about, and more specifically Bianca Belair fans, is the way she's being booked when she's actually fucking with the most confidence of any female going today. When she is actually one of the best in that ring going today. Her confidence is at an all-time high. Her matches are the best she's ever produced. And just as important as to all of that, her star power is at an all-time high. Coming out of the Royal Rumble. But if you watch NXT, even before the Rumble. But to the casual fan, the Rumble was her calling card. That was the time that you strike gold. Not to just put her in a championship match to lose within 10 minutes simplistically to a Riptide. Does wonders for Rhea Ripley, does nothing for Bianca Belair. That's Bianca's consolation prize? For her star power being at an all-time high, for her in-ring work being the best that she's ever produced, for her promos being absolute fire, for her confidence being at an all-time high. Her reward for all of that is another TakeOver championship loss. We already saw that with Baszler over a year ago. You're telling me she's just only good to be a bridge? That's why people were upset. If you're gonna make Bianca Belair lose, that could be fine. Again, Rhea Ripley should be keeping that championship after Sunday night. But you have to learn. The company needs to book both individuals strongly. After all the praise that I just gave Belair, and that most fans that have a brain in their dome piece sees on their TV screens or they're live in person, we see how good Bianca Belair is becoming, better than ever before. And that's how you book her. A 10-minute match barely, don't even think it hit 10 minutes, in one simplistic Riptide. That wasn't a war, it was barely a battle. You could not have booked Bianca Belair to be stronger than that. And if Charlotte Flair is going to come in and beat up Rhea Ripley after the match, and then also beat up Bianca Belair. So Belair didn't just lose the match, she then got tooled on by Charlotte Flair. A double loss. Made to look weak twice in a 10-minute segment. That's right, I call it a 10-minute segment, not a 10-minute match. If the plan was to have Charlotte Flair tool on both Rhea and Bianca, then why not do it during the match? Obviously, we know the answer, right? There is no way they couldn't have Rhea look super strong because she's going on to meet Vince's golden child, Charlotte Flair, at WrestleMania. But that does wonders for Charlotte. That does wonders for Rhea. What does it do for Bianca Belair? And it's exactly what we just talked about with Sheamus. How Vince was able, or willing, and able, didn't work, but he had the power to do such, to take 4 individuals, make them the League of Nations, all, and these are in Sheamus's words, not the Amplified Man's, all just to try to get Roman over. That does wonders for Roman, or at least that was the plan. It didn't end up doing wonders, because you can't force somebody to be a superstar. They either have that in them, and they have that charisma and that personality, or they don't. But they tried to do such, and in the process, they sacrificed everybody in the process. Well, just the same in this scenario. We're going to pump up Rhea Ripley, and we don't give a shit about Bianca Belair. She'll be happy she even got a championship match. But that's bullshit. When you see somebody riding an all-time high wave, you gotta let her ride it, and you gotta even help catapult her even farther. That's what people were upset about. Not necessarily the fact she didn't win or walk out with the championship. It's the fact that she was booked so weakly. Booked to look so weak. And everybody is just asking the question, couldn't you have done better? And this isn't just WWE's main roster, this is NXT we're talking about. So the answer is yes, you could have. But I would not doubt at all, even though it was an NXT takeover, and we know that Vince lets Triple H handle the majority of all creative decisions, we know that when it has to do with Charlotte Flair, I wouldn't be surprised at all if it was Vince McMahon that made sure that Rhea won that match. Simplistic Riptide. Make her look dominant. Make Belair look weak. So that when Charlotte interferes afterward, not interferes, when she jumps her afterwards, and when Charlotte goes to take on Rhea at WrestleMania, that Rhea looks dominant. Lord forbid if Belair has a badass battle with her. Lord forbid if that match goes over 15 minutes, or it takes 2 Riptides. Because then, what will Charlotte Flair be able to do at WrestleMania? Will it take 3 or 4 Riptides? That's why people were upset. Yours truly, absolutely. I saw the writing on the wall right when the match came to a simplistic end, and I was like, whoa, they did Bianca Belair like that? They did her dirty like that, and then Charlotte comes in and tools on her some more? Come on, bro. And that's why people were pissed. And Rhea Ripley's now talking about flippy-floppy fans, but let's not fool ourselves. Just 3 months ago, let's just go 3 months ago, 90 days ago, the whole wrestling world wasn't wrapped around Rhea Ripley anyway. Today, the wrestling world isn't necessarily sold on Rhea Ripley. We know she's got the look, we know she's decent and at times even good in the ring, we know she's got the power, cuts decent promos most of the time, so we know the qualities and the positives that come with Rhea Ripley. But that's not saying that we put her up on a pedestal. So I think Rhea Ripley thought that just because the company was giving her the powerhouse push, that all the fans were supposed to follow suit. But that's not the case. A lot of that NXT crowd and that fan base is behind gals like Bianca Belair. Gals like Tegan Nox or a Dakota Kai. Even though she's a threatening heel, Even Shayna Baszler. Candice LeRae even has a high-quality fan base. Not everybody was wrapped around Rhea Ripley's finger. So she can say flippy-floppy fans all she wants, but there's a very diverse group of fans in NXT. Especially when it comes to the ladies, because there's so much awesome talent. So she got a lot of people scratching their heads after their takeover match because it didn't make sense. Bianca Belair is riding an all-time high wave right now, and she was booked like some regular Joe Schmo moron. It wasn't even a bridge matchup to get her to Charlotte. This was like a jobber match. And if you think Bianca didn't deserve a little better than that, a little bit of a stronger booking, then we're on two different sides of the tracks. Hopefully that clears things up, guys, because I'll be the first to admit there is definitely flippy-floppy fans, but for somebody like Rhea Ripley that just started getting the rocket just a few months ago, and she's going to call out fans because they were unhappy with how something was booked, Rhea Ripley still has a lot of dues to be paid before she's going to start attacking fans. Because the Amplified Man is one of those fans that absolutely is perplexed by that type of booking. It's bullshit booking. Bianca Belair, at this time in her career, and I hate this word, but she deserves better than that. And that doesn't even mean a championship. That just means good booking. BC, she was in a title match. What more do you want? What I want is good booking. I say it all the time on the main roster. There are champions right now with gold around their waist or shoulder that are booked like jokes. I want the good booking. If done correctly, the championships will come and they'll actually mean something much more greater than they do now. You could have had Bianca drop that match or no contest it, whatever you wanted to do. There were so many ways you could have gone about it to have Rhea Ripley walk out with that championship, look strong as hell, but save face for Bianca. You didn't. You showcased that Bianca couldn't go past 10 minutes. You showcased that Bianca couldn't get over one simplistic riptide. And you showcased that after the match, she gets tooled on by anyone else. That's what people were upset about. It's a billion-dollar company. You can't get more creative, or you can't come up with a way just because you need to make one person look strong. You can do it in a way where the other opponent isn't looking super weak. It just takes creativity. Lord forbid if we actually use that. I'm the Ant-Man. That's the podcast for this week. I'm so glad I was able to get it to you guys this week and early, so hopefully you guys enjoyed it. And again, Friday, hopefully there's going to be another little impromptu vid. Probably won't be that long in length, but as long as I can get something out to you guys, that'll be awesome. And again, tomorrow, AEW, NXT, both reviews into one video. So that's still to come. And then, of course, Saturday, we have the SmackDown review. So still a lot of content to come. Like only the Amplified Man in the unit does it, baby. Ain't no better on this platform, and you done did the deed again. You guys rock. Much love. Coffees and ass whoopings. Think, be, live, amplified. Check you later.